Welcome back to Mondays with Megan. I wanted to talk a little bit about to further my story. I'm kind of jumping around on various topics. Picking back up on my story, how I'd shared a couple of weeks ago, which I can link that in the show notes, or the details, episode details, as it were. Can you tell I've listened to many podcasts on many platforms? I don't know what it's called on YouTube, and or Rumble and or Odyssey and or Be Sovereign. That's a neat platform that I'm exploring, for obvious reasons. So anyway, and maybe if they're not obvious, let me know. I'll explain, because I don't want to assume that people have the same knowledge that I do or that even agree. That's one thing that I really have not liked about the radical left, and still being in very woke circles in every area, given the just where I work and where I live. So I started actually to realize that there were cracks. One of the first cracks I remember in this woke ideology was actually before the term wokeism was a thing at all. It was in 2004, which was uh, almost 20 years ago. I have a hard time saying that out loud, because that is the year I graduated from high school. And it was also the year I started college at CU Boulder. And I remember sitting in it was a learning program connected to the dorm that I was in. And I was sitting in one of those classes. I think every dorm or every collection of dorms had some certain program, and that was the draw to that particular dorm. And I was in my learning community, one of my classes, which was held in my dorm building. And the professor, who was a Japanese woman, older Japanese woman, although at that point we weren't calling out people's identities. So I found it weird that was actually how she announced herself. I was like, but what qualifies you to teach this class? Because I was used to, even in high school and the other classes that I had had in college thus far, I was used to the instructors or the professors, the teachers saying their credentials, which now is like totally frowned upon. But really, we've just replaced credentials with identity, which doesn't really make sense to me. But I was used to that. So when this person shared that they were Japanese women and nothing else, I remember being really confused. And initially I was just like, okay, maybe this is just how college is, which I didn't know how prescient that statement was. But which is also another topic. You'll see that I'm going to periodically, or every other sentence, say that's a topic for another day. And I will be talking about those things another day. So I remember thinking I was confused, but I just kind of was like, oh, I'm not used to college yet, whatever. So I, gaslighted myself into not really asking, like, oh, okay, but what's your degree in, or what's your background in, educationally, where have you taught previously? And all of this sounds so insane that I am I'm like, oh, I'm gonna be attacked for elitism or whatever. But I'm like, what about identityism? How is that not totally? Because at least your credentials are things that you can choose. You can, and I know there's an accessibility problem with college. I get it. That is something we're going to talk about, but not in this video. But you don't get to choose. You don't get to choose if you're Japanese or American or Cuban or what. You don't get to really choose that. You can get dual citizenship. You can, in some cases, actually in Europe, it's impossible, really, in most places, at least that I know of, that I've looked into. You have to be there for like 20, 25 years. So that's another topic as well. But you can't really choose. And I actually would argue you cannot choose your gender. I would also argue you cannot choose your sexual orientation. And I'm confused why the ideology says you can choose one but not the other, when that statement, you can't choose something that's a hardware. You can't choose your sexual orientation. That's a hardware claim. There's no hardware. I'm getting wildly off topic, which is just pretty much how this is going to go. I should probably call it ping pong with Megan. Anyway, so nobody else really asked any questions. And we started talking about what I was told by the class description was about ethnicity and culture. So, and which is weird. Like, you don't really hear the term ethnicity that much, or at least I don't. Maybe you do. In which case, I would be really interested in hearing where you're hearing that term, ethnicity. So I hear it more in when I'm studying scripture, and we want to talk about the term ethnos in Greek. So she writes on the whiteboard the definition of racism, which she declares is, and you probably have heard something like this. This was, mind you, 2004. So this is one of those weird things that I don't think has changed that much in terms of word usage. I am very shocked to see how many other words have completely changed definitions. Like the definition of a woman, which apparently is so complicated that no one can define it, which I'm just going to say as a little sidebar, when the Supreme Court justice was just a Supreme Court justice was asked, who is a woman? What is a woman? And she said, I'm not a biologist. That actually was a pretty good argument. Oh, so being a woman does have to do with biology. Okay. That's what everybody before us for thousands of years has thought as well. Great. So I feel like a lot of people really missed that. They were like, oh yeah, we can't define it. And she said only if I were a biologist, I'd be able to. Okay, so being a woman, which is a gender claim, being female is a biological claim, but apparently being a woman is a biological claim as well. Alrighty then. So the definition of racism is prejudice plus power. Well, I was confused by that too. Because I'm like, isn't it just you're judging somebody based on the color of their skin? Because why throw in power? Like, why? This was my question back then. What, that seems very arbitrary. Why would you throw in prejudice? Prejudice, yes, plus power. That just seems very self-serving. Like only certain people can be racist then, which really doesn't make any sense. I'm not going to get into the reverse racism thing. That's not where I'm going with this. Anyway, and mostly I'm just telling my personal story. Like, here's my question. Why is it that this is related to power? Because my assigned roommate in that dorm that year, was, I don't know her background at all, but she defined herself. She identified as, which is not, that wasn't a term back then either. But she identified as Black, and that wasn't just like me eyeballing her. She informed me of this, and she just came in with guns blazing, and unapologetically hurling really awful, like she didn't even know my name. She looked at me and started saying awful, I'm not going to repeat them, awful things to me. And I was so shocked. I had no idea where it was coming from. All I did was try to introduce myself. I didn't even get to hi, I'm Megan. I got to hi, I'm and bleepity bleep, bleepity bleepity bleep. Like, it was like, do you think I'm somebody else? I'm confused. And so this was before I, had a spine and could do any sort of confrontation. So I just kind of left the room because I was just very unsure how to respond. And she immediately asked for a room change. I was not informed until much later that semester, that it was because I was racist. That was the reason. And I'm like, I said 2 words. Hi, I'm. That's all I said. Now I see what was going on, but back then I was so flabbergasted. And I know exactly how the radical leftists are going to interpret that. Because it takes a while for the cult to leave you, So I know exactly what y'all leftists are going to say. Oh, it's just your white privilege, and oh, you were so sheltered, and I didn't. Yeah, okay. That was also the first year I heard the term white privilege, which I know is apparently the evidence of my privilege. Anyway, right now I'm just saying here's where the cracks started. But because I was so hypnotized by it seems that the woke cult has married, apparently is an offensive term now, I guess, or a respect for marriage act. That's another thing we're going to get into at some point, because just like almost all government bills, it does the opposite of what its name is. So anyway, it's like the Inflation Reduction Act. Oh my gosh. Anyway, we'll get there. So, and this is also the problem with train of thought rabbit trails, because sometimes I don't remember what I was talking about. But I remember, the general thing is, what were the cracks at the beginning? So I don't think that I really respond. There wasn't really a way to respond when I was told, oh, the reason that this person had requested a room change was I was told, and I don't even know if these were her words at all. I just know that this is what I was told. That I was racist. So I'm like, but I didn't actually say anything. I was so confused. But I didn't ask any questions. I didn't follow up because I was told, here it is. It's coming back. I wanted to be on the good side. Even then, I was already afraid to be a bad person. They marry, the woke cult marries their ideologies with morality. So not only, if you disagree, not only are you like wrong or stupid or bad, you're immoral. And it's really confusing to me that would be a thing, because it's like, so y'all are very secular though. Not that there aren't, I know unfortunately a lot of very woke Christians. And I also know a lot of far right Christians. So again, this is nobody has the monopoly on the crazy. But I as an ideology, it's Marxist at its core, which is atheist. Or it's humanism, believes in the long arc of progress. Socialism is the next step after capitalism, which is on the march to communism. So but that's progress. And I don't even, there are a lot of other good YouTubers that are talking about that particular crazy rabbit hole. So I'm sure it'll weave in here and there. But that was my first, like, so something is up with this. I think the second one was when I was in a writers group quite a long time ago as well. I remember I'd been in there for quite a while, and we were talking about craft. Is this a good story? Do you care about the characters? Not so much are they likable, although, that was a thing back in the early aughts. Is the character likable, which was mostly female characters, or it's expected of female characters, or expected of female authors to create likable characters. not so much male stuff. So male, same. So we talked about, do you care enough about the characters to want to know what's going to happen to them, whether you're rooting for them or not? Like, do you want them to fall flat on their face, or do you want them to win? Or do you hate them and you still want them to win? Right. So these are all the things about like craft and creating a good story. Well, I remember when it switched. It was right around, I remember I don't know if it was right around when it came out, but it was right around when I read the book Identity Politics. I really wish I could remember the name of the author. And that was when I was like, oh yeah, there is something, this is not going to go well. There's something here. There's something wrong with that. I didn't let go of it though, because I was like, well, people seem to listen to me if I say, you know, well, I'm a woman. It's not true anymore, but it was. So, but I remember reading that book, and then right around that time, it was when my writers group stopped talking about craft, stopped talking about, is the ending both inevitable and surprising? Are you carried through by the author the entire story? Like, do you want to keep reading, or are you just reading because you're in this group? Where, and you know, sentence and line edits too, but it switched to who was allowed to write what kind of character. So I immediately had a problem with that, because it conflicted with this other thing that I knew to be true. We talked about it in my AP English class a lot. Fiction is the greatest, that's probably overstating it, but what I understood from what my English class was talking about, my senior year of high school, fiction is the most powerful way to engender empathy in someone. And that was when the, what is now DEI was, back when like the E still stood for empathy, you know, instead of equity, which PS is actually socialism, which PS is lowering the standards apace with the standard of living to the lowest common denominator, which is pretty offensive if you think about it that way. Not that being offended is an argument, because it is not. So I remember being like, I'm not going to participate. I'm not going to participate in debates about if a man gets to write female characters, or if a white person gets to write a black character, or if a straight person gets to write gay. And I noticed it only went one way, which, I mean, we can talk about survival culture all we want, but I feel like that is incredibly patronizing. And I've actually been told by many, many people of color that that is extremely patronizing. So I won't go there, but I just remember thinking like, this is going to lead to very, very bad writing. I'm not saying you should tokenize or appropriate at all. That is also bad writing and should not be. And it's more than that, obviously, but I'm talking about the context of the writers group. So I think you should be allowed to write whatever character you want, but to do it well, you actually have to get to know people of whatever identity that you are seeking to write about. So, and a lot of times men will write female characters in such a way that it's what they want or imagine women to be rather than what we actually are. So that's happened a lot. And that's pretty universally acknowledged, I think, in the literary community. And women don't do that as much. That's also acknowledged in the literary community. So I don't know if that means women are just better at empathy, and or if they're just better writers, or if it's really not about better or worse, but it's about some sort of skill. Women tend to be more relational than men, which is a stereotype, but it's a stereotype for a reason. And again, I'm not saying no man is relational and every woman is. That's not what generalizations are. I would say look it up, but the dictionary is so trashed at this point that I don't know if y'all are gonna find anything useful, which is really terrifying. So anyway, um, I didn't like the way the writers group was going, and so I said I'm not going to participate in this. You cannot both demand empathy, understanding, inclusion, and also make identity proprietary. Kind of goes back to something I said in one of my other videos. Identity for the woke is declarative. If I'm a cat, if I say I'm a cat, I'm a cat. If I say I'm a poached egg, I'm a poached egg. Right? Like, I'm not making fun of trans people. Also, P.S., I can hear the squawking in my head. I'm talking about how absurd the concept of identity is declarative is. Whatever you're declaring. Whatever you're declaring. And that's something I'll get to later. Like, identity is not not in this video, it's already gone long. Identity is not declarative, identity is negotiated. I stole that from Jordan Peterson. I didn't steal it because I'm quoting him. And what I would have said, and that's just a brilliant phrase. And what I would have said is, sometimes we know ourselves better than other people. That's true. And sometimes we have post-it note syndrome, which is we're walking around life yelling, everything is yellow, everything is yellow. And everybody on the outside can see that the only thing that's going on is we have a post-it note on our forehead. So sometimes we do not see ourselves as accurately as other people do. Sometimes we see ourselves more accurately than other people do. That's why both are needed. That's why the term, the phrase identity is not declarative, it's negotiated, is brilliant. Because it's not to say other people define you. No, that's not what's going on. But it's kind of scary how hard it is to give feedback. And the far right, I'm not as familiar with it. So I don't want it's a cheap shot. I'll just say right now, it's a cheap shot to say far right does it too. Other people do it too. I know, but my scope right now is on the left. I'm scoping it out because I feel I have been lied to, and I am not the only one. I can link to a whole lot of other people who woke up in the last couple of years. So anyway, I started to have those, but they weren't long lasting. They were little cracks that then I, papered over with, but I'm being a good person. And I was told since I was about 6 years old by culture, schools, I don't think my parents said directly, but maybe indirectly, that it might be immoral to have children because you don't know that you can't guarantee there's going to be a livable planet. We're going to talk about climate alarmism later too, and that's probably the thing that's going to get me banned now. Since it's going to go from COVID lockdowns to climate lockdowns. I know. I am well aware of the things I say that could be labeled as conservative talking points. Again, I don't know what those are because I've spent the last 35-ish years thinking the right was stupid and also like bad morally. So I didn't bother to learn anything about them. So that's awesome. Anyway, there were a number of other cracks in the armor aside from the stuff at CU Boulder around the definition of racism, which I will say I shared with a friend later after I had moved out of state and just recited it as if it was, everybody knows this. Because that is one of the ways that I think the woke cult operates. It's called it's like swarming. Everybody knows this. Everybody knows this. Everybody knows this. Everybody knows this. It's a way of silencing and canceling. So dissident voices, I mean. Yeah. So I don't think that I really had a very strong sense of right and wrong, just a very strong sense of wanting to be a good person, which the woke ideology has totally monopolized, and it's very unfortunate because allyship is a cheap way to fix things. Like, especially, I love what Jordan Peterson says about activism. I realize that a lot of people are offended by Jordan Peterson. Okay, fine, you have the right to be offended, and I have a right not to care. As an adult, I am not going to be responsible for caretaking other people's feelings. That would be called codependency, and it's not healthy. So before I get too far afield, I'm going to end now. That's just kind of some of the first cracks in the armor of the woke ideology that I think are still kind of relevant and playing out today. Not just for me, but like on a large, terrifyingly large scale. So that is it for this episode of Mondays with Megan. And I'm excited to see you all next week. One thing that if you want more of my content, I do blog or post to my newsletter. It's on good months, it's 2 times a month. And on not so good months, it's once a month. So my fingers are crossed that it's going to be the 1st and the 15th of every month. And I'm talking about these topics, but I'm going to be focusing more on my newsletter, the free level, on where I agree with the left still. Because as I said in one of my most recent videos, I am not in the business of furthering division. I'm not a middle of the road person, but I'm not about contributing to division. Because insofar as it is possible with you, live at peace with everyone, as it is written. I'm really bad at quoting the Bible. So there's that. I have a theology degree, so I should definitely be better at it, but I am not. I know it is written, but that was good enough for Paul, right? As it is written. Because of the angels, as it is written. Speaking of angels, hi. Oh, you're so cute. Oh, big stretch. Big stretch. Yeah. Oh, do you want to attack the cord? Yeah. You want to attack the cord? Is it because they're really expensive? Yeah. Muggy. Oh, you're so soft. Yeah. Little magisterial snow beast. Yeah. So the 2-week or the 2-week, every other week, every 2 weeks newsletter is going to be about, hopefully, where I agree with the left still. And then I have a couple of other subscription levels, which you can check out at my newsletter, my website, which is meganwildhood.com. So I also have a full-length poetry collection coming out next year. So first one ever, Lifelong Dream. It's really great when childhood dreams come true. It's literal magic. I will say, not literal magic. I don't believe in literal magic. I'm not one of those like ban Harry Potter people, but miracle. I'll say miracle. And it really is like, it's fulfilling in a way that not a lot of other things are. So I am really excited about that. I know poetry is not everybody's thing. It's not a lot of people's things, but it's pretty interesting because it is kind of a time capsule. A lot of these poems I wrote when I was still a radical leftist. So, and when I was editing it, I'm like, oh, I don't disagree with some of this stuff. So that kind of spurred in my newsletter, I'm going to be talking more about what I agree with on the left still. So there's that. And it's not because I'm afraid of shade. It's because I want to tell the truth. So, meganwildhood.com, no H in my first name, H in my last name. Very interesting. People want to take the H out of my last name and put it in my first name. But no creepy extra letters, no silent H's. Just the easiest way to spell Megan. Not quite phonetic. And then wildhood is like childhood, but with a W in place of the CH. If you want to hear the story about wildhood, let me know in the comments. And I will see you all next week on Mondays with Megan. Okay, bye.